So today I want to look at one of the most important parts of this, and that is your file management on your MacBook or your Mac OS. Obviously, if you can't create files on the computer yourself, whether that means copying and pasting or dragging from one file to the other or creating new folders on your desktop, then you're going to have some issues going forward. So I think it's just important to be able to practice some of these kind of things. Typically speaking, I work on my desktop and I create everything working off my desktop, which is just the background that you see here. And I will typically have one file with all my raw data in it, and you can see if I double click this one, I've already got data from the nights of August 11th. This is that data that we took with the 810DA, the new Nikon camera. And so, and you'll see that I have all kind of laid out here. Don't worry about this abort folder. In fact, I'll go ahead and just delete that. That naturally gets put in there. I'm just going to remove it to the trash. I'm going to select it. There will be a little bit of an issue here. I could have went up and selected it and went up here to your edit menu, and you would have said where it allowed you to cut it, which basically trashes it, or I can go to File and say Move to Trash, one of the two. I will typically do a right click on my mouse. Now with Macs, that can be an issue. Right clicking can be an issue with a Mac, if I remember right. But I'll try to use the menus as much as possible in explaining the way these things work. But anyway, you'll notice that in each of these I have all the, I can click these things down to these arrows to reveal what's in these files. If I want to double click on any individual file, you'll notice that up here at the top right here where it says Cocoon Nebula, it just tells me I'm in that folder. And then your back arrow here will back click to show you the structure that's there. I can do this. You'll notice here where it says I can show all my icons as individuals. I will typically show the list of them. You can get into these kind of things where you can scroll them this way. Again, I think it's just more important to leave it on this second one, the one with the vertical lines here, which shows you just the list of them, or put it as this and just click as you need them. I don't think that's a bad approach to it. But essentially, you're going to keep your raw files in a folder, and you will use these as you need them, and you will never work with the raw files themselves. You will never save to the raw files. You will always end up using them and then basically as a copy, and you will save all your working data to another folder, which means you're going to have to create that new folder. So let's look at the ways we would do that. Notice how if I'm on my desktop, and as long as my Finder, see right here where it says Finder, the Finder is everything I can do with the Mac OS. And so if I go here and just go to File menu, and if I say New Folder, it will actually create a new folder for me, and you can see it. I'll normally put it in some place we don't want it. And then if I drag it over here, I can name it however I want by either clicking on it and then and actually see how that I-beam cursor comes up. That means I can type in it like this and call it whatever I want. I can delete it just to show you that I'm about to type something here. So in this case, I would normally call this process data. And quite often I'll date this depending upon the times that I shot it. So if usually I'll do that by month. So this would be like August, process data for August 2015, meaning that any of the raw data that I'm working here would end up being in a directory that is placed into this folder. So anyway, just being able to do that is important. Again, being able to create new folders If I want to make a copy of this, probably not a bad idea. Notice how if I select any folder, I can come up and to the edit menu, I can actually copy that whole folder, and then if I paste in another folder or on the desktop, I can create new folders. So you have a lot of abilities here to be able to just, for a little redundancy, just to back up your data, just in case you're worried about accidentally writing over it and copying it. But essentially what we're going to be doing is using data on the left-hand side, which means when we get into a program like PixInsight, we're going to open up the files we need from the raw data folder, whichever particular folder we need within it. And then when we go to save, we're going to be saving our documents within this folder. Now, usually if I'm going to open both of these folders side by side. So on the left-hand side, there's my raw data, and on my right-hand side, process data. And typically, let's say I want to go in and work something from the 11th, and maybe I want to do the Lagoon Nebula here, and which will be one of the first things we do. And again, if I just want to see this as a list as opposed to anything else, I can easily show that. List can be a little bit difficult because of the naming convention that the camera uses. Remember, these NEF files are the raw files for the Nikon, and so when you see NEF, it just means that these are our raw files, the camera outputs. Notice the way the camera also has these labeled. These are light files on the camera, meaning they're our regular light frames. 45 seconds indicates the length of each individual file, and then 1600 ISO is obviously the camera setting. Now, notice if you want to know the order in which they're taken, they actually tell you the time that they were taking. The camera records this, and which is this 22 hours, 27 minutes, and 24 seconds, and even goes into milliseconds, believe it or not. So 22 hours is roughly, this is roughly around 10:30ish, and so at night. And notice how it lists down so this imaging session started around 10:27 in the evening, and we were pretty much done with it by 10:52. So we snapped a good, what is that, 30 pictures, 30 images or so, and basically all these frames are ready for us to process, and we'll look at processing those in a different video. First of all, though, let's say I do want to take and process images of the Lagoon Nebula if I want. And again, you can show these as icons or as drop-down list. It really depends. Just remember that back arrow always gets you to the, however you want to do it. It gets you to the previous menu. But if I'm going to work Lagoon Nebula, I would probably come over here to the process data folder, and I would probably create a new folder within that. So I'd come down to File, New Folder, and notice how it gives me an untitled folder. And if I just hover right over it before I even start, it actually allows me to just click right inside of it, and I can give that a name. And I would just type this Lagoon. And since it's under the process data folder, it's obvious that everything underneath the Lagoon, this folder, is going to be processed. And so essentially what we're going to do is, as we go through the different files, as we align them, as we calibrate them, whatever steps we do, we'll create those new files within the Lagoon directory. And in fact, quite often at this point, I will go within the Lagoon and I'll create new ones. And this will make a little bit more sense later. I can come up and save individual files as being calibrated if I want. Calibrated files within Lagoon. That'll make sense. In other words, once we apply darks or flats, if that applies, we can save a copy of that raw data into here, and then we can always know that these are calibrated files. So if we ever want to reprocess them, we don't have to go back to the raws. We can already start with calibrated. Maybe I want to go to a new folder, and once they're calibrated, maybe I want to align them. Obviously, we can have drift in our stars. So if I want to align the files, I can. I will often call these registered files. it's up to you. Registered in is probably the more appropriate term for it in PixInsight. But there it is. So I would normally do this. I would normally put files in calibrated after they're calibrated, and then I would use these files to register. Obviously, I don't want to do both calibration and registered files on both raw files, because then I'd have registered files that are not calibrated if I'm not careful. So it's a process that will build upon itself. So we'll see that as we go. But just remember that is the way that works. We can create those directories any way that we want to. The other thing that you'll need to just know about is if we go into the Lagoon and notice the scroll bar here as I get there, you may sometimes need to create a little bit more room with your windows, and you can create those like this. Remember the way you select and copy, and this will make, you can highlight these individually, or you can kind of, remember you can always hold down your shift key. So if I select on the first one, scroll down to the bottom, and if I click on this last one while I'm holding down the shift key, very important, you'll notice that it selects every one of them in that list. Or if I then click on any one of them while holding the shift key, I can just select the appropriate number of them if I want to. You get the idea. If I hold down the command key, I can select only the ones that I want to select. So that's important as well. But usually, typically, I would choose the first one, select the shift key, and then click on whichever one is the last one. And you can see that they're all there. Once they're selected, I can lift off the shift key. And then if I wanted to make a copy of these, or if I wanted to drag them over, usually what will happen is you will open these and use the same methods when I'm within the menus of PixInsight. And you'll use those same type of hold down the shift and select those kind of things when I'm going for those different kinds of files. We'll talk about that more when we talk about PixInsight and opening those files in our part 2. So anyway, get used to dragging those files open, and resort to this video on file management in the event that you forget how to do something with the Mac OS, and I think it will make a lot more sense to you as you go. But essentially, we're going to be dealing with two different files here. I've got a copy of that I put my JData down here. Don't worry about that. I'm just going to keep it down here. This is some of the data I've already done, and I've just kind of got it all mixed up right now. But it's just we'll be working directly with these two folders for the most part. Anyway.